Thanks to everyone. It's been, it really is interesting how much we all do build upon each other. My name is Lisa Dugdale, and I'm on the initiating team of Transition Ann Arbor, which many of you may not have heard about yet, so I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to that. But I guess first I just wanted to say that the recent economic crisis isn't so much a crisis as an inevitability. As Tom definitely mentioned, a lot of our economy has been built on cheap oil and products made out of cheap oil, as well as increasing the amount that we extract from our natural resources. So clearly there's got to be a better way to do that, and there's got to be a way to do that that gives us a higher quality of life. So Transition Towns is a movement that started in England, and it's looking at the intersection of three issues, which Tom also laid out for us, which is the global climate change and the fact that we need to drastically reduce our carbon footprints, each of us, and some countries in particular, including the U.S., and looking at that and looking at the peak oil, the fact that the price of oil is going nowhere but up, and pretty much all of our products are made with oil, from oil, or require oil in some way. So if the price of oil continues to go up and becomes more expensive to extract, we're going to have to rethink a lot of what we do and how we do it. And the third one is the economic instability. So if you put those three things together, you look at where we're going to be, it doesn't look pretty. But then what Transition Towns does is to look at the fact that we can take this opportunity to really plan for that. Think about how do we as a community think about where we're going? How do we gracefully descend from using as much oil and energy as we have been into and create a better community? And there are several things that we can do to make this transition easier. First, in our governmental, business, university, and individual purchasing, we can favor policies and purchasing choices that focus on buying less, but buying better quality goods, goods that will last for a long time. And preferably goods that use a minimum amount of petroleum products if we can. And the second is repairing and repurposing existing items so that we can grow service and repair industries instead of sweatshop produced items that are made unsustainably. And we can also buy items which use less energy to produce, locally produced items and items made in a more sustainable manner, such as food. Food is the most obvious way that we can do that because it's something we all buy and we all use, and there are many great sources of local food. We can also buy from locally owned community businesses so that we can create good jobs locally and keep money circulating in our community. We all know that purchasing at locally owned businesses keeps 60% more money circulating in our local area. But I think more importantly, it also contributes to our quality of life because people can work at jobs where they love doing what they're doing and things that they're good at doing. That's a whole lot better than working in a cube farm. So I think the more we can do that, the more we'll help to build an economy where we can each find our niche and create a good quality of life. Some of the things that our community could do is to research what we would need to do to provide for our community's basic needs so that we are increasingly prepared as costs rise for shipping goods from across the world. For instance, does our region have enough land to grow food to support the people living here? Jeff seems to think they do. The question is, how do we make that happen? How do we encourage new farmers who are inexperienced, and how do we develop policies in schools and universities that preference locally produced goods and food? You can also do an economic leakage analysis. In what sectors, and that's a fancy term for looking at, in what sectors does the most money leave our economy? For instance, does our community consume a lot of chickens, but none of them are raised here sustainably? And do we have land to grow chickens? So for instance, just looking at a couple basic sectors of our economy and looking at what the best way to use existing resources are to relocalize our manufacturing and our production. Another way to do that is to create a local currency. That's something that's been of great interest to many people in the community. And Think Local First just received a grant from the Downtown Development Authority to do a feasibility analysis of what it would take to create a local currency and which types of currency, because there are many different ways in which you can do that, have been most effective in other places. And finally, let's not forget some of the things that we can all do as individuals, and that's to look at our own individual energy usage. Reduce your carbon footprint in the areas of transportation, housing, and food. Transition Towns is doing something we call a reskilling festival, where you can come and learn more about learning some of the basic skills we all used to have. How do you can things? How do you preserve things? How do you live more self-sufficiently in this community and share some of the skills that you have with your neighbors? The other thing you can do is just build strong neighborhoods. Share, teach, learn, and trade with your neighbors. And Jeff and Lisa are a great example of that particular thing. They've done a lot to revitalize their neighbors and to build community, and I think that's another really important thing we can do. And the final thing that I kind of belonged earlier, but is to do an energy descent action plan, and that's something transition towns and transition movements are moving towards, which is to look at community-wide, what do we need to do to transition gracefully to a future in which there is a lot less petroleum, a lot less oil available, and how do we build a strong, resilient community that we all want to live in while we do so.